The topic for today will be the tag filter query language, which is new with StableNet 11. Maybe some of you have heard about it. If not, we will present it here. And I will just say a few words about what it is and how you can use it, and then we'll take a look at some practical examples. So before we had tag filters, which were mostly XML, or you could click them in the GUI. But for complex filters, it was quite complex. So to make it easier, working with the tags and creating tag filters, we came up with a tag filter query language, which is very easy to use, human readable, and it can be used in various areas of StableNet. For example, in the GUI or the web. You can use it in the REST API, which I'll be showing later on, and also in other places where you previously used tag filters, like in the XML discovery or in servlets. And it is supporting the full complexity of the tag filters, which is very good. You can use equals, not equals operators, contains, matches. You can negate stuff. You can reference predefined tag filters, and so on. So it's very, very flexible, and also, as I said, easy to use and easy to read. And the first example that I would like to show you will be here in the web GUI, the new web portal, and you can use it, for example, in the group analyzer. So if you go here on tag filters, you can select a tag filter here. Now I could click it in the GUI, obviously, but since I want to show you the new tag filter query language, I will just copy and paste the filter here. I could type it. So in the paste window here, I could type it. So it's very simple. You have an expression, for example, device vendor, which is the tag category. And then I can just say, for example, equals Cisco. And it will filter on Cisco devices. What I can also do to make it even easier, instead of using, I could use and or. I will show some examples later on. But I can also use grouping, so I could do something like this. So we now have vendors, Cisco and Juniper. So I will apply this, and if I reload the data, I will have now data for vendor Cisco and Juniper. And let's take a look at the nice chart. We take a look at the inventory and maybe the device types. And one thing that is also new in the new web portal is the new data visualization, which we can use to take a look at this data, for example, in a donut chart type. So we have filtered now on the Cisco and Juniper devices, and we can see now here that we have a total of 78 devices, and you can see down here in the legend which models we have. For example, from the 3640s, we have 5 devices in total. The same thing we could use also to filter on some type of measurements, for example, or on some custom tag filters. I want to show another example. So let me first remove this tag filter, and we can use another tag filter here. This time I will copy it to make it a little bit faster. So we have use cases in our demo lab, which is the system that I'm showing you right here. And one of the use cases is called cloud. And if I apply this tag filter, now we will only get data for the cloud. Obviously, I have to switch back to the monitors, for example, to get some meaningful data. And if I load the data again now, we can see we have the monitor data here. And with this type of data, I maybe take a look at all. Okay, monitors, load it again. And now I can visualize the data again in a nicer way than the table, which is loading automatically. So I can do, for example, this event time, and I can group them a little bit and take a look at the state. So now we have what you already know from the path from the GUI, the monitor availability DNA chart. You can work with this in a similar way, and you have already seen the copy and paste feature, so you can copy and paste filters in this new format in the GUI, in the web portal, and you can also use it for the REST API, which is the next examples that I want to show. As I mentioned before, you can use it also in other areas like servlets or the XML discovery, but for this short webinar, I will be focusing on the web GUI and on some REST examples that I've prepared. So maybe we start off with the example that we've already seen in the web GUI. I'll make this a little bit bigger. So we can get a list of the cloud measurements, for example, and the tag filter for this is very simple. You can see here, you can just add it to the REST request for measurements and type it in here. And if I send this request, it will give me a list of the measurements. The same I could do for the monitors. The filter is the same. The difference is I get a list of the monitors here. Of course, I could still use the old filter method where I post an XML filter. I will show you an example about the difference in complexity with one of the other examples. We were looking before at Cisco and Juniper devices. Of course, this is available in the REST API as well. So we have here another REST call, which is again a measurement list, but with another filter. In this case, device vendors equals Cisco or Juniper, what we've seen in the GUI previously. And if I send this request, it will return me a list of measurements for the Cisco and Juniper devices. And of course, I can work with more complex filters than this. Until now, we were working with quite simple ones. So I can add some more complexity by saying I want, for example, only interface measurement. So I have the filter now. I'm highlighting it here, device vendor Cisco and Juniper, and measurement template type interface. And if I use this filter, now I will get through the REST API a list of the measurements, interface measurements for the Juniper and Cisco devices. You can, of course, take a look at it. We won't go through all the results in detail right here. Just as an example, maybe we take a look at the same query with XML. So you can see here we have a Mixml filter, which is a lot more complex than the filter that I've shown you before in the new tag filter query language. The two filters, this one and this one that you can see up here, are exactly the same, just the different syntax of XML and tag filter query language. And we can also take a look at monitors, for example, using a similar filter. So you can take a look at the monitors list. So this one will return the monitors as a list and not the measurements, as the name suggests, of course. And we can see here a list of all the monitors for the interface measurements for Cisco and Juniper devices. So we can take a look here at the filter again. And if you want to add more filter possibilities, we can take a look also at only the operational status monitors of interface measurements, for example. So the filter becomes a little bit more complex, but still you can fit it here in a few characters, and it's very easily human readable. We can go through it a little bit so that you get an idea. So we have device vendor equals Cisco and Juniper, and measurement template type interface, and monitor type operational status. So it's quite easy to write and also to remember and to understand most of all. And you can see we have here the result of all the operational status monitors for the interfaces of Cisco and Juniper devices. And if you take a look at the same filter in XML, it becomes quite obvious that it's a little bit more complex. You have to combine and or tag filters, and yeah, the functionality is the same, but it's a little bit more difficult to read. As I said before, we have also some more functionality which is available for the tag filter query language. Actually, all the functionality of tag filters that you know before. So you could also filter on something like if a tag is existing, or an example could be filtering on a state. So let's take a look at some further examples. To begin with, a list of IP-SLA measurements. So we have this query that I prepared here. In this case, just send it first. In this case, I'm using a reference filter. So there is a predefined filter which is called vendor_Cisco. So instead of typing device vendor equals Cisco, I can just reference a predefined filter, and I'm looking at IP-SLA measurements. So you can see we have some IP-SLA measurements here. The same we can do for monitors. The filter is the same. And we get now a list of monitors, not measurements anymore, with the same filter. And we can also take a look at the state, as I said before. So now we are looking at monitors for obviously Cisco devices and measurement of type Cisco IP-SLA, and state minor to critical. And now we get one measurement that actually has an alarm. We can see it here. It's on the Moscow router in our router lab, some IP-SLA jitter measurement. And if I'm not mistaken, this is we're looking at the monitor availability chart for Office, but we could take a look at the same here, and we will get the chart here to see all the IP-SLA. Maybe we do this real quick. I will copy the filter from here. So just copying it, and now we can take a look in the GUI at the same type of data. I'm going back to the analyzer, and I will first delete this filter and then paste some filter here. So we have the filter that we already copied, and we can apply it and load the data. And now we can see this is exactly the same. Maybe I do one change before we look at the data in the chart. So wait a second. I removed the state filter. So now we should see all IP-SLA measurements, right? And now we can go to the data visualization and take a look at how it's looking like. Yeah, so we can see here this IP-SLA jitter measurement on the Moscow router in our router lab, which we saw previously also in the REST API examples. So this would conclude the webinar and the practical examples. As I mentioned before, you can use the tag filter query language also in the discovery if you're using discovery templates, and also servlets if you're using them. And of course, more information is also available in our documentation if you want to check it out. So thanks